The sirens wailed somewhere below, their blue light cutting through the rain-soaked streets of Seoul. Odessa stood in handcuffs, her silk gown clinging to her body as security guards flanked her on both sides. Above her, on the marble balcony of the Han Tower, he watched. Song-han, the man whose empire she had infiltrated, the man whose heart she had supposedly stolen. His face remained carved from stone, champagne glass in hand, as they pushed her toward the waiting police car. They say the higher you climb, the harder you fall, Odessa whispered to herself, rainwater mixing with tears she refused to let anyone see. I went from scrubbing floors to wearing diamonds worth more than my life, and now I'm being arrested for stealing them. She looked up one last time. Their eyes met across the distance. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in his expression. Then it was gone, replaced by that familiar mask of indifference. But the biggest theft? Odessa's voice broke. That was his heart. And right now, he's watching me lose everything. What he doesn't know is that I'm about to lose something far more valuable than my freedom. 3 weeks earlier, the clock read 2:47 a.m. Odessa's knees ached against the cold marble floor of the Han Empire Hotel's executive washroom. Her reflection in the pristine mirror showed a woman who'd aged 5 years in the last 6 months. Dark circles, exhausted eyes, hands raw from industrial cleaning solutions. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it from her uniform pocket, already knowing what she'd see. Another hospital bill. Her mother's treatment wasn't getting cheaper. In fact, the doctors were now talking about an experimental procedure that might save her life. Cost? $200,000. Money Odessa would never see in 10 lifetimes of scrubbing other people's luxury. Just get through tonight, she told her reflection. The woman staring back didn't look convinced. 3 more floors, then home. Then figure out tomorrow when tomorrow comes. She pushed her cleaning cart toward the service elevator, her mind already calculating. Maybe she could pick up extra shifts. Maybe she could sell her grandmother's jewelry, though that would break her heart. Maybe she could. The elevator doors opened on the 47th floor. Odessa blinked. Wrong floor. She was supposed to be going down to the parking garage, not up to the executive suites. She pressed the button again. Nothing. The panel flickered, numbers dancing across the screen like they were mocking her. Then the doors slid open to a space she'd only seen in magazines and training videos she was explicitly told never to enter. The Imperial Suite. No, no, no. Odessa's heart hammered against her ribs. She jabbed the button frantically, but the doors had already closed behind her. She heard the lock mechanism click into place with a sound of finality that made her stomach drop. Her keycard must have malfunctioned, granting her access to a world she had no business entering. Security would see this. She'd be fired before sunrise. The suite stretched before her like something from a different planet. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Seoul's glittering skyline, the city lights reflecting off the Han River in the distance. Every piece of furniture probably cost more than her annual salary. The art on the walls was the kind you saw behind velvet ropes in museums. Even the air felt expensive, carrying the subtle scent of sandalwood and something else. Something that made her instincts scream danger. Then she heard it. Breathing. Rapid, shallow, desperate. The sound of someone drowning on dry land. If you want to know what happens when a broken elevator changes destiny, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Because this story gets darker before dawn breaks. Odessa froze, her hands still on the cleaning cart. Someone was in the darkness near the floor-to-ceiling windows. A figure hunched forward in one of those designer chairs, hands gripping the armrests so hard she could see white knuckles even from across the room. The city lights cast half his face in shadow, but she recognized him immediately from the staff briefings and the business magazines in the break room. Song-han, the Ice King himself, heir to the Han Empire, the man who'd fired 3 managers in one day last month. The man whose photograph never showed him smiling. The man who, according to hotel gossip, had never raised his voice because he never needed to. One look was enough to destroy careers. And he was falling apart. His chest heaved with each labored breath. Sweat dripped down his face despite the suite's perfect climate control. His eyes were wide, unfocused, lost in whatever private hell his mind had dragged him into. She'd seen this before. Her mother had looked exactly like this during her first panic attack in the emergency room. Every ounce of common sense told Odessa to back away slowly, call someone, pretend she'd never seen the great Song Han at his most vulnerable. But her feet moved forward instead, carrying her toward him like she was watching someone else control her body. "Sir." Her voice cut through his gasping. "Sir, I need you to look at me." His eyes snapped to hers, and for a moment she saw something wild and dangerous in them, something that made her wonder if she'd just made a fatal mistake. But beneath the danger was terror, raw and stripped of all pretense. "Get out." His voice was a rasp, barely recognizable. "Get out before you what? Pass out." Odessa kept her voice firm, the same tone she'd used with her mother during the worst nights. "I'm not leaving until you can breathe properly, so work with me here." She moved closer, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. "In for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Can you do that?" "I said get." But his words dissolved into another gasping breath. Odessa reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small silk sachet. Her grandmother's blend, the same one she'd made for Odessa's mother. Lavender, chamomile, and something else her grandmother had never named. She held it out, close enough for him to smell but not so close that she invaded his space. "Focus on the scent. Nothing else exists right now except this smell and your breathing." For an eternal moment, she thought he might throw it across the room. Thought he might call security and have her arrested for daring to touch him, to see him like this. But his hand trembled as it reached out, fingers closing around the sachet like it was a lifeline. He pressed it to his face, and she watched as his breathing slowly, painfully slowly, began to even out. The panic receded like a tide pulling back from shore, leaving behind exhaustion and something far more dangerous than the panic itself. Silence filled the suite, the kind of silence that felt like the moment before lightning strikes. Then his eyes sharpened, and the man who had been drowning seconds ago became something else entirely. Predatory, calculating. The Ice King returned, and Odessa suddenly understood why people feared him. "You saw me." His voice was flat, emotionless, more terrifying than if he'd shouted. "You saw me weak. I saw you having a panic attack," Odessa corrected, keeping her voice steady even though her heart was racing. "I saw you human." The wrong answer. She knew it the second the words left her mouth. He stood in one fluid motion, towering over her, and snatched her ID badge from her uniform with movements so quick she barely registered them. Odessa Diallo, 26. 3 years with this hotel. Night shift cleaner. Mother currently at Seoul National University Hospital. Stage 3 diagnosis. The blood drained from Odessa's face. "How do you?" "I know everything about everyone in my properties." He pocketed her badge and the sachet, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're the textile design graduate who never got to use her degree. The woman who takes double shifts to pay medical bills. The one who's been trying to get into the design department for 2 years with no success." Each word felt like he was reading from her diary, exposing secrets she'd never told anyone. "Sir, I didn't mean to intrude. The elevator malfunctioned, and you saw something no one is allowed to see." He pulled out his phone, typed something with sharp, precise movements. "Which means you're now a liability. I can't have you telling anyone about what happened here." Odessa's throat tightened. "I won't tell anyone, I swear. Please, I need this job. My mother needs. I'm not firing you." He looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "I'm promoting you, or hiring you, or buying your silence. Call it whatever helps you sleep at night." Before she could process what that meant, he dismissed her with a wave of his hand. The elevator doors opened behind her as if on command, like even the building obeyed him. "Go home, Miss Diallo. A car will be at your apartment at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Do not refuse the offer. Do not make me come find you." Odessa stumbled into the elevator, her mind reeling. The doors closed on his face, that unreadable expression that could mean anything from salvation to destruction. The ride down felt like falling through space. The next morning, Odessa woke to aggressive pounding on her apartment door. She opened it to find a man in a perfectly tailored black suit holding a thick envelope. Behind him, a Mercedes idled at the curb, as out of place in her neighborhood as a spaceship. "Miss Diallo." Mr. Han requests your presence at 8 a.m. sharp. The man held out the envelope. Inside, Odessa found $5,000 in cash. Crisp, new bills that smelled like possibility and danger. Underneath the money was a note in sharp, precise handwriting that somehow matched his personality perfectly. You saw me break. Now you will help me stay whole. The car will wait 15 minutes. Use this money however you need. Consider it a signing bonus for a job you don't understand yet but will accept anyway. We both know you have no choice. 8 a.m. Do not be late. KH. Comment below if you've ever had a moment that changed your life in a split second. Because Odessa's walking into something that will either save her or destroy her, and she won't know which until it's too late. Odessa stared at the money. $5,000. 2 months of her mother's medication. 3 months of rent. A buffer against the constant terror of one more bill she couldn't pay. She thought about refusing, about staying in her small, safe life where at least she understood the rules. Then she thought about her mother's latest scan results, and how the doctor's eyes had held a sadness that said time was running out. She got in the car. The driver said nothing as they cut through Seoul's morning traffic. Odessa watched her neighborhood disappear in the rearview mirror. The small shops, the street vendors, the world where she understood her place. They entered a part of the city where the buildings gleamed like temples to wealth and power. The Han Group headquarters rose before them, a glass tower that pierced the sky like a declaration of dominance. Odessa had cleaned enough luxury spaces to recognize real money when she saw it, and this building screamed it from every polished surface. Inside, the lobby was all marble and modern art. Employees in designer suits moved with purpose, none of them sparing her a glance as she followed a new escort toward the elevators. But Odessa caught the looks from the receptionists, the slight narrowing of eyes, the silent judgment of someone who clearly didn't belong. The elevator rose so fast her ears popped. Top floor, executive level. The doors opened to reveal a space that made the imperial suite look modest. Everything was clean lines and expensive materials. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 3 sides showed Seoul spread out like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. Mr. Han will see you now. Odessa was led into an office that could have swallowed her entire apartment 3 times over. Song sat behind a glass desk that probably cost more than her life savings, perfectly composed in a charcoal suit, as if last night had never happened. Not a hair out of place. Not a hint of the man who'd been gasping for air hours ago. Sit. Not a request. Command. Odessa sat in the chair across from him, her borrowed confidence already starting to crack. I have a problem, he said without preamble, without greeting, without any acknowledgement of their previous encounter. I'm being forced into a merger marriage with Kang Sora. You've heard of her. Odessa nodded. Everyone in Seoul had heard of Kang Sora, the Ice Princess, daughter of the Kang business empire. Beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful, perfect, cold, untouchable. Ruthless enough that even the business magazines wrote about her with a mixture of admiration and fear. The merger benefits both families financially. It's been arranged since we were teenagers. In 3 months, I'm expected to propose at the annual Han Group Gala. 6 months after that, we marry. Our empires combine. Everyone profits. His eyes locked on hers, and she saw something dark swimming in their depths. Except I'd rather burn my company to the ground than marry her. Odessa's breath caught. That seems dramatic. You've never met her. A muscle twitched in his jaw, the first sign of real emotion. Which is where you come in. I don't understand. Song stood and moved to the window, his silhouette dark against the bright city beyond. You will be my creative consultant. Publicly, you'll help redesign our hotel interiors. I've seen your portfolio, the one you submitted to our design department twice and was rejected both times. Not because you lack talent, but because you lack connections. Odessa's face burned. He'd read her rejected applications, seen her failures. Privately, he continued, you'll help me make that merger impossible. By doing what exactly? He turned to face her, and the intensity in his gaze made her want to look away. She didn't. By being exactly what you are. A talented woman from a world Sora considers beneath her. Someone she'll underestimate. Someone who doesn't play by the rules of our society because you never learned them. Someone who will disrupt everything simply by existing in my space. The words should have felt like an insult. Instead, they felt like a weapon he was handing her. You want to use me to make her angry. I want to use you to make her show her true face. Sora's family has built their empire on a foundation of carefully hidden crimes. She's the same, beautiful on the surface, rotten underneath. But as long as she maintains her perfect image, the merger proceeds. If I can make her drop that mask, expose the monster she really is, the merger collapses. My board will never approve a union that damages our reputation. Odessa's hands clenched in her lap. So I'm bait. You're an employee. A very well-paid employee. He moved back to his desk, pulled out a contract that looked like it had been prepared by an army of lawyers. $50,000 per month for the next 3 months, plus a $50,000 signing bonus, plus full coverage of all your mother's medical expenses, including that experimental treatment the doctors mentioned. Odessa's world tilted. How do you know about? I told you. I know everything. He pushed the contract toward her. I also know you're drowning in debt. I know your landlord is threatening eviction. I know you've been eating 1 meal a day to save money. I know you're running out of time and options. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You investigated me. I investigate everyone who sees me vulnerable. It's called survival. His voice softened just slightly. But I also saw your design portfolio, the one you keep in that folder under your bed. The sketches you make on your breaks. You have a gift, Miss Diallo. The kind of vision that could revolutionize Korean fashion if anyone gave you a chance. He opened another folder, and Odessa's breath stopped. Inside were photos of her sketches. Designs she'd never shown anyone. Dresses that blended Korean silk with West African patterns. Suits that managed to honor both cultures without appropriating either. Where did you get those? Your landlord was surprisingly cooperative when I offered to pay your back rent. He didn't sound apologetic. I needed to know if you were worth the investment. You are. Odessa should have been furious about the invasion of privacy. Should have walked out. Should have told him to take his money and his manipulation and leave her alone. But she looked at the contract again, at numbers that could save her mother's life, and realized he'd known exactly which strings to pull. Why me? Seoul is full of designers who'd kill for this opportunity. Because you helped me when you had every reason to run. Because you're not afraid of me, or at least you hide it well. Because when Sora sees me interested in someone she considers beneath her, someone who doesn't fit into her world of arranged marriages and business transactions, she'll lose control. He leaned forward. And because you need this as much as I do. Maybe more. The truth of it hung between them like a blade. I want everything in writing, Odessa said, hating how her voice shook. Every promise, every payment, an exit clause if this goes wrong. And I want your word that my mother's treatment continues even if I have to walk away. For the first time, Song smiled. It was small, barely there, but it transformed his face from intimidating to almost human. Smart. I expected nothing less. My lawyers will have the updated contract ready within the hour. And what happens after 3 months? When the merger is stopped or not stopped? What happens to me? That depends entirely on how well you perform. He extended his hand across the desk. Do we have an agreement, Miss Diallo? Odessa looked at his hand. Looked at the contract. Looked at the photos of her designs that he'd somehow obtained. She thought about her mother in that hospital bed. About the dreams she'd buried under the weight of survival. About the fact that she'd been invisible her entire life and here was someone offering to make her seen. Even if his reasons were purely selfish. Even if she was just a tool in his game. Even if this would probably end in disaster. She reached out and shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm, surprisingly gentle. We have an agreement. Excellent. Welcome to the Han Empire, Miss Diallo. Your transformation begins now. Like this video if you can feel the trap closing around her. Because what Odessa doesn't know is that Song just made her the most visible target in Seoul. The transformation started before Odessa had time to process what she'd agreed to. Song's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Min-ji, appeared within minutes of the contract signing. We have an appointment in 30 minutes, Min-ji said, looking Odessa up and down with the assessing gaze of someone who knew exactly how much work lay ahead. Mr. Han has requested a complete wardrobe consultation. Wait. I thought I was supposed to be a design consultant for the hotels. You are. But you can't consult on luxury design while looking like. Minji paused diplomatically. While wearing that, Odessa looked down at her worn jeans and faded jacket. Fair point. The car took them to Gangnam, to an address that made Minji's expression shift to something like surprise. He's taking you to Atelier Rousseau? That's unexpected. Why? Because it's where Seoul's elite go for custom pieces. Waiting list is usually 6 months minimum. Celebrities can't even get appointments. Minji's voice held a note of warning. Whatever Mr. Han is planning, he's not starting small. The atelier was housed in a building that looked more like a museum than a clothing store. Soft classical music played as they entered. The air smelled of expensive fabric and ambition. A man who Odessa recognized from fashion magazines, Jean-Paul Rousseau himself, came forward with an expression of barely contained curiosity. Mr. Han called ahead. He said you were someone special. Jean-Paul circled Odessa like she was a sculpture he was considering purchasing. He also said, and I quote, "Whatever she wants. No budget. Make her look like she could buy the building." That seems excessive, Odessa managed. Darling, excessive is my specialty. Jean-Paul clapped his hands, and assistants appeared from hidden doorways carrying bolts of fabric. Now let's see what we're working with. Tell me about your design background. For the next hour, Odessa found herself surrounded by more luxury than she'd ever imagined. Silks from Italy that felt like water. Linen from France that somehow looked expensive even before it was tailored. Cotton so fine she could barely feel it between her fingers. But it was when they brought out the Asian fabrics that something shifted inside her. This one. Odessa held up a bolt of deep burgundy silk, letting it catch the light. Her designer's eye immediately spotted the flaw. The weave is wrong. See how it catches here? It's beautiful, but it won't drape properly for evening wear. The thread count is inconsistent in this section. The room went silent. Jean-Paul took the fabric from her, examined it closely, then laughed. Mon Dieu, she's right. How did you? I studied textiles before. Odessa's voice trailed off. Before life got in the way. Before survival became more important than dreams. Jean-Paul's expression shifted to something like respect. You have an eye, a real eye, not just taste. What would you design if you could design anything? The question unlocked something in Odessa. She moved through the fabrics, her hands selecting pieces with a certainty she'd forgotten she possessed. Korean silk here, West African Ankara print there, French linen as a base, Japanese cotton for structure. I designed something that doesn't exist yet, she said, already seeing it in her mind. Something that honors both sides of who I am. Korean elegance meets West African boldness. Not fusion that implies one dominates the other, but harmony. Two equals creating something new. Show me. For the next 2 hours, Odessa sketched. Dresses that would make a statement in any boardroom. Casual wear that looked effortless but cost more than most people's monthly rent. Evening gowns that somehow managed to be both dramatic and elegant. Each piece carried threads of both cultures woven together like the fabric itself was telling a story. When she finally put down her pencil, the room was silent again. But this time the silence felt different. Reverent, almost. Jean-Paul held up her sketches with shaking hands. These are extraordinary. The way you've balanced the elements, the color theory, the structural integrity. Where did you study? Seoul National University. For 2 years before I had to drop out. What a waste. Jean-Paul turned to Minji. Tell Mr. Han I'm clearing my schedule for the next month. I want to make every single one of these pieces. That's going to cost. Minji started. I don't care what it costs. Jean-Paul's eyes gleamed with the fever of an artist who'd found something rare. Tell him if he questions the price, I'll add another 0 out of spite. This woman is a prodigy. Minji made a phone call. Spoke quietly, then nodded. Mr. Han says to make everything. He'll send payment today. As they left the atelier, Odessa felt like she was floating. I can't believe that just happened. Get used to it. Minji's expression was unreadable. Mr. Han doesn't do anything by halves. If he's decided to invest in you, he'll invest completely. Just remember, everything comes with a price. The warning in her voice was clear. But Odessa was too high on the feeling of being seen, really seen, to pay it much attention. That was her first mistake. 3 days later, boxes began arriving at Odessa's tiny apartment. 20 custom outfits. Shoes that probably cost more than her monthly salary each. Accessories that looked like they belonged in a museum. Her landlord's eyes widened when the delivery trucks kept coming. "Miss Diallo, should I be concerned?" he asked, watching yet another luxury brand box being carried upstairs. "I got a new job," Odessa said, which was technically true. That night, she stood in her apartment surrounded by more wealth than she'd touched in her entire life. She tried on one of the dresses, a deep green piece that combined Korean silk with subtle West African gold threading. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for a version of herself she didn't know existed yet. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that she somehow knew was Song. "Saturday, 7 p.m. I'm taking you somewhere. Wear the green dress. Time to make our first public appearance." Her stomach flipped. This was real. This was happening. She was about to walk into Song's world and pretend she belonged there. She looked at herself in the mirror. The dress made her look confident, powerful, like someone who could stand next to a man like Song Han without disappearing. But underneath the silk, her heart hammered with the knowledge that she was about to become visible in a way that might get her destroyed. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. "Don't be nervous. You're not pretending to be someone you're not. You're becoming someone you already are. See you Saturday. K." Odessa stared at the message. He'd somehow known she was spiraling, known exactly what to say. It should have been comforting. Instead, it reminded her that Song saw everything, knew everything, controlled everything, and she just agreed to let him control her too. Saturday arrived too quickly. The car picked Odessa up at 6:30, giving her just enough time to second-guess every decision that had led her here. The green dress fit perfectly, but she felt like an imposter wearing someone else's skin. The car pulled up to a building in Gangnam that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought money was an art form. A gallery opening Minji had texted earlier. "Seoul's elite will all be there. So will Kang Sora. This is your debut. Make it count." Song waited outside, and Odessa's breath caught. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than a car. His hair perfectly styled, his expression unreadable. But when he saw her step out of the car, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or approval. "You look like you were born to wear that dress," he said. "I designed it. I'd hope I know how to wear it." He smiled, and she realized it was the second time she'd seen that expression. "Ready?" "No." "Good." Nervous energy reads as excitement. "Use it." He offered his arm. "From this moment on, everyone is watching. Every word matters. Every glance will be analyzed. Stay close to me. Follow my lead. And whatever happens, don't let them see you doubt yourself." Odessa took his arm, feeling the solid warmth of him through the expensive fabric. "What if I mess this up? Then we adapt." His voice dropped lower. "But you won't. You didn't panic when you found me at my worst. A room full of rich people should be easy in comparison." They walked into the gallery, and immediately every head turned. Odessa felt the weight of 100 gazes, assessing, judging, trying to figure out who she was and why she was touching Song Han. Song's hand moved to the small of her back, a possessive gesture that sent whispers rippling through the crowd. He kept it there as they moved through the space, marking her as his in a way that was impossible to miss. "You're causing a scene," Odessa murmured. "That's the entire point." His voice was calm, but she felt the tension in his body. "Let them talk. Let them wonder. By tomorrow morning, every society page will be speculating about who you are." They stopped in front of a painting, something abstract that probably cost more than Odessa's life savings. She was trying to think of something intelligent to say when a voice cut through the ambient noise like a knife through silk. "Song." Odessa turned to see her. Kang Sora, even more beautiful in person than in photos. Tall, elegant, dressed in white like a snow queen. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. But it was her eyes that made Odessa's stomach clench. They were the eyes of someone who'd never lost anything and didn't plan to start now. "You didn't mention you'd be bringing a guest." Sora's gaze slid to Odessa, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. How unexpected. Sora, this is Odessa Diallo. She's my creative consultant. She's redesigning the interiors for the Han Empire hotels. Really? Sora's smile widened, showing perfect teeth. I had no idea you were hiring interior designers. I thought the Han Group preferred to work with established firms. Odessa isn't just a designer. She's an artist. Song's voice carried across the immediate area, loud enough that people nearby could hear. Her vision is exactly what our properties need. Sora turned her full attention to Odessa, and it felt like being examined by a predator deciding whether you were worth eating. How fascinating. And where did you study, Odessa? Seoul National University. Textile design. How lovely. Did you complete your degree? The question was casual, but the trap was obvious. Odessa could feel people listening, waiting to see how she'd handle being exposed as someone who didn't finish her education. I completed 2 years before my mother became ill. Family comes before credentials. Odessa met Sora's eyes directly. Though I notice my incomplete degree produces better designs than many people's complete ones. A few people nearby tried to hide smiles. Sora's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. How charming. And that dress you're wearing. Did you make it yourself? I designed it. Jean-Paul Rousseau made it. That landed. Sora's mask cracked just slightly. Jean-Paul was her designer, someone who usually refused new clients. The fact that he'd taken on Odessa, and taken her on quickly, was a statement. Well, Sora's voice took on an edge. How quaint. Playing fashion designer. You should stick to what you know, though. Cleaning, wasn't it? I'm sure someone mentioned you worked in hospitality before this opportunity. The words hit exactly where they were meant to. A few people looked uncomfortable. Others looked intrigued by the drama unfolding. Song stepped slightly in front of Odessa, his voice dropping to something that could cut glass. Careful, Sora. Jealousy doesn't suit you. Jealous? Sora laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. Of her? Darling, she's a distraction. And distractions are temporary. Our families have been planning this merger for years. You think a little slum girl with delusions of grandeur will change anything? The slur hung in the air. Several people gasped softly. In Seoul's high society, such open cruelty was usually hidden behind polite words and subtle implications. Sora had just ripped the mask off completely. Odessa felt rage flood through her, hot and sharp. But before she could respond, Song spoke, his voice cold enough to frost the windows. The merger is business, Sora. But my time is mine. And right now, I choose to spend it with someone who has actual talent rather than just an inherited last name and a degree in being cruel. He took Odessa's hand. Enjoy the gallery. We have better things to do. They walked away, leaving Sora standing alone in her white dress, her perfect composure finally cracking enough that people could see the rage underneath. As they moved through the crowd, Odessa's hands shook. You just declared war on her. She was already my enemy. Now she's yours too. Song's grip on her hand tightened. Which means the plan is working. She's gonna come after you now. And when she does, she'll expose exactly who she is. You could have warned me she'd be that vicious. If I'd warned you, you wouldn't have responded authentically. Your shock, your anger, that was perfect. Real. Now everyone in this room knows 2 things. I'm interested in you, and Sora is threatened by you. He stopped, turned to face her. I know this is harder than I made it sound, but you handled that perfectly. Odessa wanted to be angry at him for putting her in that position. But she could see the respect in his eyes, genuine and unguarded for just a moment. She's going to make my life hell, isn't she? Probably. But here's what Sora doesn't know. You're not alone in this. Whatever she tries, I'll be there. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. I don't abandon my people. The words should have been just tactical, just part of the plan. But the way he said them made Odessa wonder if maybe, just maybe, this was becoming something more than a business arrangement. That was her second mistake. Hit the subscribe button if you can feel the danger building. Because Sora isn't going to let this insult slide, and what she's planning will destroy everything. The gallery incident made headlines by morning. Every society blog featured photos of Song and Odessa, their body language analyzed in excruciating detail. The comments ranged from curious to cruel, but the message was clear. Song-han had publicly chosen someone outside his social circle, and Seoul's elite was scandalized. Odessa's phone exploded with messages. Friends she hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to meet for coffee. Her former classmates from university reached out with congratulations that felt more like fishing for information. Even her landlord knocked on her door to ask if she needed a bigger apartment. But it was the message from her mother that made her cry. The hospital just called. They said my treatment is fully covered. Odessa, what did you do? Who is this Song-han the nurses keep mentioning? Baby, please tell me you didn't sell your soul for my medical bills. Odessa stared at the message, then typed back, I didn't sell my soul, Mama. I just borrowed it for a while. I'll explain everything when I visit tomorrow. That afternoon, Song summoned her to his office. When she arrived, he gestured to a folder on his desk. Your mother's first treatment is scheduled for next week. The doctors are optimistic about the success rate. Thank you. The words felt inadequate. I don't know how to repay. You're repaying me by doing exactly what we agreed. Speaking of which, he pulled out another document. I'm taking you somewhere this weekend. A traditional tea house. Private, intimate, the kind of place where we can talk without being overheard. Is this part of the plan? Yes and no. He looked at her with an intensity that made her stomach flip. Sora will hear about it. But I also want to talk to you. Really talk. About why I'm doing this. About what happens when the merger falls apart. About. He paused. About whether you understand what you've walked into. I walked into a business arrangement where I pretend to be your consultant while you use me to sabotage your engagement. Is that all you think this is? The question hung between them. Odessa didn't have an answer. Saturday found them at a traditional Korean tea house in Bukshin, tucked away in a part of the city where history still breathed through the streets. The building was old, preserved, beautiful in a way that felt timeless. They sat in a private room with paper screens and low tables, the scent of green tea mixing with incense. Song looked different here, less like the Ice King, more like a man carrying weight he couldn't put down. My father built the Han Empire from nothing, he said, pouring tea with careful precision. He was brilliant, ruthless when he needed to be, kind when he could afford it. He taught me everything about business. But he died before he could teach me how to survive the pressure of being him. The panic attacks, Odessa said softly, started 6 months after his death. The board expects me to be exactly like him. The shareholders expect it. The employees expect it. Everyone wants the Ice King. Cold, perfect, unbreakable. His hand trembled slightly as he set down the teapot. But I'm not him. I'm barely holding it together most days. Then why not just tell people? Why pretend? Because the moment they see weakness, the vultures descend. Competitors who want to absorb our company. Board members who want to replace me. Families like Sora's who want to control us through marriage. He looked at her directly. The merger isn't just about business. If I marry Sora, her family gets a seat at our table. They get access to everything my father built. And they'll slowly dismantle it piece by piece until the Han name means nothing. So this is about protecting your father's legacy. It's about protecting what's mine. What I've bled for. His jaw tightened. But also about refusing to become the kind of man who marries someone he can't stand just because it's convenient. My father loved my mother. Really loved her. That's why he built all of this, to give her a kingdom. If I marry Sora, I'm admitting that love doesn't matter. That people are just assets to be traded. Odessa's chest tightened. You said the panic attacks started after your father died. But Sora said you'd been planning this merger for years. Were you engaged to her before? The engagement was arranged when we were teenagers. My father was still alive then. He thought it made good business sense. Song's voice went flat. But he changed his mind before he died. He told me to find someone I could actually love. Someone who saw me as human, not as a trophy or a business opportunity. He said the panic attacks would kill me faster than any competitor if I spent my life pretending. But the engagement continued anyway. Because my father's wishes aren't legally binding, and the board sees the merger as too valuable to lose. They think I'm being emotional, irrational. They think I'll come around eventually. He leaned forward. But I won't. I'll burn everything down before I give them what they want. The conviction in his voice was absolute. Terrifying. Compelling. That night you found me, Song continued, was the worst attack I'd had in months. I'd just come from a board meeting where they'd set the proposal date. 3 months. They gave me 3 months to propose to Sora or they'd call a vote to remove me as CEO. I thought I was out of options. Out of time. Out of air. And then I showed up. And then you showed up. His eyes softened. You didn't see the Ice King having a breakdown. You saw a man who needed help, and you helped him. No judgment. No leverage. No demands. Just human kindness from someone who had no reason to show it to me. I had every reason. My mother has panic attacks. I know what they look like. I know how terrifying they are. Which is why you're different from everyone else in my life. He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of touching hers. You understand what it's like to be drowning. You understand what it costs to keep fighting when everything hurts. That's not something I can fake or buy or manipulate. It's just real. Odessa looked at his hand, so close to hers. She could close the distance, could turn this from a business arrangement into something more dangerous. Something that might hurt worse than anything Sora could do. She pulled her hand back. We should keep this professional. The plan only works if we're both clear-headed. Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or relief. You're right, of course. But as they sat there in that ancient tea house, drinking tea and pretending their hearts weren't betraying the carefully constructed boundaries of their arrangement, Odessa realized the plan had already failed, because she was starting to care about him. And that was the most dangerous thing she could do. The following week, everything escalated. Odessa moved into the design studio Song had set up for her, 3 floors in the fashion district, equipped with everything she'd ever dreamed of. Fabric samples from around the world, industrial sewing machines, a team of assistants who actually listened to her ideas. She threw herself into the hotel redesign project, creating designs that blended Korean elegance with global influences. The Han Group's board was impressed. Song's hotels were getting publicity they'd never had before, all because of her vision. But the more successful she became, the more dangerous her position grew. Sora started appearing at the same restaurants Odessa visited, the same cafes, the same design showrooms, never directly confronting her, just watching, making sure Odessa knew she was being observed. Then came the Instagram posts, photos of Odessa from years ago, back when she was just a cleaner, screenshots of her incomplete university transcripts, comments from anonymous accounts questioning whether she'd slept her way into Song's favor. She's trying to destroy my reputation, Odessa told Song one evening in his office. Let her try. Your work speaks for itself. He pulled up his computer screen, showing her the latest numbers. Hotel bookings are up 40% since we announced your redesign. Every architecture magazine in Asia wants to interview you. You're becoming exactly what I knew you could be. None of that matters if she destroys my credibility. Then we move faster. Song's eyes gleamed with something sharp. I'm hosting a charity gala next month. It's the perfect opportunity to show Seoul exactly who you are. Your designs, your talent, your legitimacy. What about Sora? She'll be there. She'll try something. And when she does, we'll be ready. But they weren't ready for what Sora actually planned. 2 weeks before the gala, Sora showed up at Odessa's studio unannounced. She walked in like she owned the place, her white designer suit perfect, her smile poisonous. Odessa, how lovely to see you in your natural habitat. Odessa looked up from the fabric she was working with. What do you want, Sora? I want to commission a dress. Sora's smile widened. For the charity gala. Something unique. Something only you could create. Every instinct screamed this was a trap. I'm fully booked. I'm willing to pay triple your usual rate. And I'll recommend you to all my friends. Think of the exposure. Think of what it would mean to have Kang Sora wearing a Odessa Diallo original. She moved closer. Unless you're afraid you can't design something worthy of me? The challenge was obvious. Refuse and she looked petty. accept, and walk directly into whatever trap Sora had prepared. Odessa met her eyes. What's your vision? Surprise me. I trust your creative instincts. Sora's voice dripped with false sweetness. I'll need it 2 days before the gala. That gives you 10 days. Can you handle that? I can handle anything you throw at me. We'll see. Sora turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Odessa? Make sure it's perfect. I'd hate for there to be any complications. After she left, Odessa's assistant Minacio looked worried. That was definitely a trap. I know, but I don't have a choice. If I refuse, she'll tell everyone I'm not a real designer, just Song's pet project. Then we make the most incredible dress anyone's ever seen. So perfect she can't find a single flaw. For the next 10 days, Odessa poured everything into that dress. She worked 18-hour days, perfecting every stitch, every seam, every detail. White silk with subtle embroidery, elegant but powerful. A dress that would make Sora look like a queen while satisfying Odessa's artistic integrity. What Odessa didn't know was that during Sora's first visit to the studio, she'd planted a listening device in the office. Every conversation Odessa had with Song about Han Group business. Every private moment. Every detail about upcoming deals and strategies. Sora recorded all of it. And she had a plan for how to use that information. The night of the charity gala arrived like a storm finally breaking. Odessa wore a golden dress that Song had commissioned specifically for this event. Silk that caught the light like liquid metal, with subtle African-inspired embroidery in the threading. She looked like someone who belonged in that world, like someone who could stand next to Song Han without fading into the background. The Han Tower's ballroom glittered with wealth and power. Seoul's elite filled the space, their diamonds catching the chandelier light. Odessa recognized politicians, celebrities, business magnates. These were the people who shaped Korea's economy with their decisions. And she was about to become the center of their attention. Song found her near the entrance. You look like you could own this city. I feel like I'm about to throw up. That's just fear. Use it. He took her hand. The dress I commissioned for you? It's now on display in the lobby with your design sketches. Everyone walking in is seeing your work first. You're not just my guest tonight. You're the featured artist. Odessa's breath caught. You didn't tell me you were going to do that. Because you would have panicked. Come on. Let's show Seoul what real talent looks like. They entered the ballroom together, and just like at the gallery, every head turned. But this time the whispers were different. Curious instead of judgmental. Impressed instead of scandalized. People had seen her work in the lobby. They knew she wasn't just Song's accessory. For the first 2 hours, everything was perfect. Odessa talked to designers who'd only been names in magazines before. Business owners wanted to commission her for their spaces. Fashion editors asked for interviews. She was networking, connecting, becoming exactly what Song had promised she could be. Then the security alarms went off. The head of security rushed to Song's side, whispered something urgent. Song's expression went dark, dangerous. He turned to Odessa. Stay here. Don't move. What's wrong? Just trust me. Please. He disappeared with the security team. Odessa stood frozen, watching other guests whisper nervously. Then she saw Sora across the room, wearing the white dress Odessa had designed for her. Fit perfectly, looked stunning. And Sora was smiling. 5 minutes later, the security team returned. They were carrying Odessa's work bag, the one she'd left in the design studio, nowhere near this event. The head of security approached her, his face grim. Miss Diallo, we need to speak with you. What's going on? He opened her bag on a nearby table. Inside were documents, confidential Han Group files, USB drives, corporate secrets that should never have left the building. And there, nestled among the papers, were the Han family diamonds, the same ones currently locked in the company vault. Except they weren't in the vault anymore. They were in her bag. The room went silent. Every guest stared. Cameras flashed. Sora stepped forward, her expression the perfect mix of concern and shock. Oh my God. Song, I tried to warn you. I discovered she's been selling your corporate secrets to Jang Corporation. I have recordings, conversations she's been having about deals she shouldn't know anything about. That's not true. Odessa's voice cracked. I never. The evidence is right there. Sora's voice was soft, sympathetic, perfectly calculated to make her look reasonable. I know you trusted her. I know you thought she was different. But some people can't help what they are. Odessa looked at Song, waiting for him to defend her, to tell everyone this was impossible, to choose her over the evidence that was clearly planted. He stood there, silent, his face an unreadable mask. Song, please. Odessa's voice broke. You know I wouldn't do this. You know. Sir. The security chief looked between them. Should we call the police? The ballroom held its breath. Odessa held hers. Everything came down to this moment, whether Song believed in her or believed the evidence Sora had so carefully arranged. He looked at Odessa. Their eyes met. She tried to communicate everything. The truth, the trust, the fact that she'd started to fall for him despite knowing better. Then he spoke, and his voice was the same ice she'd heard that first night in the Imperial Suite. Do what needs to be done. Odessa felt her world shatter. Song, please. Take her. His voice cut through her pleading. Get her out of my sight. The security guards moved forward. Odessa barely felt them put handcuffs on her wrists. She barely registered the gasps from the crowd, the camera flashes, the whispers that would destroy what was left of her reputation. All she could see was Song, standing there like a statue, watching her be dragged away like she meant nothing, like she'd never meant anything at all. They pulled her through the ballroom, past the elite of Seoul who looked at her with pity or disgust or satisfaction, past her own designs in the lobby, which now looked like evidence of her delusion, past everything she'd built in the last 3 months. As they pushed her toward the exit, Odessa looked back one last time. Song stood on the balcony now, champagne glass in hand, watching her leave with that same expression he'd worn the night they met, perfectly controlled, completely closed off. The Ice King who never let anyone see him break. The rain had started, turning Seoul's streets into rivers of light and dark. They put her in a police car, and Odessa finally let herself cry. She'd been right from the beginning. This had always been going to end in disaster. She'd just been stupid enough to hope it might end differently. The car pulled away from the Han Tower, and Odessa watched everything she'd built disappear in the rearview mirror. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't see, was that Song was still watching her from that balcony, and the champagne glass in his hand was shaking. If your heart is breaking right now, you need to hit that like button. Because this story is about to take a turn no one sees coming, and it starts in exactly 3 days. The police car didn't go to the station. Odessa was too numb to notice at first, too lost in the wreckage of everything that had just happened. But eventually, she realized they were driving in the wrong direction, away from the police station and toward the wealthy part of Gangnam. Where are we going? She asked. The officer in the passenger seat turned slightly. Mr. Han's orders, ma'am. What? They pulled into an underground garage of a luxury building. Private, expensive, clearly not any kind of government facility. The officers led her into an elevator and up to a penthouse apartment that made her studio look modest. Floor-to-ceiling windows, designer furniture, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. A view of Seoul that was breathtaking even through her tears. I don't understand, Odessa said. The officer removed her handcuffs. You're to stay here until further notice. Everything you need has been provided. Someone will be in contact soon. Am I actually arrested? Ma'am, we're private security. We work for the Han Group, not the Seoul Police Department. His expression softened slightly. You're safe here. That's all I'm authorized to tell you. They left, locking the door from the outside. Odessa stood in the middle of the penthouse, her golden dress now feeling like a costume from someone else's life. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know you're angry. I know you're hurt. But trust me, this was the only way to keep you safe. Don't contact anyone. Don't post anything. Stay hidden. I'll explain everything in 3 days. K. Odessa threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall but didn't break. Nothing in this place was breakable. Everything was too expensive, too well-made, too perfect. Just like the trap she'd walked into. She sank onto the couch and finally let herself fall apart. All the fear and rage and betrayal came flooding out. She'd trusted him. Despite every warning, despite knowing this was a business arrangement, She'd started to believe it was becoming something real, and he'd just destroyed her in front of all of Seoul. But as the hours passed and the initial shock faded, Odessa forced herself to think clearly. The evidence had been too perfect, the timing too convenient. Sora had wanted her arrested at that gala, publicly humiliated in front of everyone who mattered. But Song had controlled exactly how that arrest happened. Private security, not real police. Penthouse, not a jail cell. A promise of explanation in 3 days. Either he was planning to destroy her even more thoroughly, or this was still part of the plan. Odessa walked to the window, looking out at Seoul's glittering skyline. Somewhere out there, Song was either celebrating her downfall or executing a strategy she didn't understand yet. 3 days, his message had said. 3 days until everything made sense. Odessa just had to decide whether she could forgive him for those 3 days of hell. The first day passed in a blur of rage and confusion. Food appeared, expensive, perfectly prepared meals that Odessa barely touched. Her phone buzzed with messages from people she thought were friends, all of them asking for details about her crimes. The news outlets were having a field day. Designer accused of corporate espionage. Song Han's mystery woman arrested for theft. Cinderella story ends in handcuffs. The second day, Odessa started analyzing everything. Sora had planted the bugs in her studio. That much was obvious now. The recordings she mentioned would have captured every conversation Odessa had with Song about Han Group business. But those conversations had never been about real secrets. Song had always been careful about what he said in the studio, which meant he'd known about the bugs too, which meant everything had been theater. The realization hit Odessa like lightning. Song had used her as bait, but not just for Sora's emotions. He'd used her to feed false information, to make Sora think she was winning when she was actually walking into a trap. And the arrest at the gala? That was the final act. Making Sora think she'd destroyed Odessa completely, so she'd let her guard down. Odessa should have been furious. She was furious. But underneath the anger was something else. Admiration. Song had played a game at a level she was only now beginning to understand. On the third morning, Odessa woke to find Song sitting in her living room. She was across the room in seconds. You have exactly 5 seconds to explain before I throw something expensive at your head. The bugs in your studio. The planted evidence. Sora's entire operation. I knew about all of it. His voice was calm, but his eyes were intense, burning with something that looked almost like fear. I knew she'd try to destroy you, so I let her think she'd succeeded. You let me believe you'd betrayed me, because if you'd known the truth, you wouldn't have played the part convincingly enough. Sora needed to see real fear, real betrayal, real heartbreak. His jaw tightened. If you'd known it was fake, she would have seen through it, and everything we've worked for would have collapsed. So you broke my heart for authenticity? Odessa's voice shook with rage. I broke your heart to save it. He stood, pulling out a tablet. While you were arrested, while Sora was celebrating, my team launched a comprehensive audit of the Kong family's business operations. Every transaction for the last 10 years. Every hidden account. Every illegal deal. He handed her the tablet. The screen showed news headlines from this morning. Kong Corporation under federal investigation. Kong Sora implicated in multi-million-dollar fraud ring. Han Group severs all ties with Kong family. Odessa scrolled through article after article, her hands shaking. The Kong family was being destroyed. Sora was facing criminal charges. The merger was dead. The evidence she planted on you? It was actually documentation of her own crimes, carefully edited to look like it came from you. The USB drives contained her communications with competitors, her bribes to government officials, everything. Song's voice was hard. The conversations she recorded in your studio? I fed you false information about deals that didn't exist, projects that were fabricated. Every secret she thought she was stealing was bait. And when she tried to use that information, she contacted Jang Corporation with insider information that was completely false. They paid her $2 million for trade secrets that were worthless, which gave us proof of corporate espionage that we turned over to federal prosecutors. Odessa's mind spun. The diamonds in my bag were replicas. The real Han family diamonds were never at risk. But when Sora's people planted them in your bag, We had them on camera committing theft. That was the final nail in the legal case. You set her up. Completely. She tried to destroy you. She tried to manipulate my company. She spent years assuming she could control everything because no one ever fought back. His voice went cold. I showed her what happens when someone does. Odessa should have been relieved, should have been celebrating. But all she felt was hollow. You used me as bait without telling me. You let me think you'd abandoned me. You didn't trust me enough to let me help. No. Song moved closer. I didn't trust myself to see you hurt and stick to the plan. If I'd told you what was happening, if I'd seen the fear in your eyes while knowing it was partially my fault, I would have broken. I would have stopped everything to protect you, and Sora would have won. So this was about protecting me? This was about destroying someone who threatened you. There's a difference. His hands clenched into fists. I couldn't risk Sora hurting you. She's ruthless, vindictive, and she has resources. The only way to keep you safe was to make her think she'd already won. So she'd stop looking for ways to hurt you further. And what happens now? Now? Song's expression shifted to something that looked almost vulnerable. Now I'm asking if you can forgive me. Not for the plan that was necessary, but for letting you suffer for 3 days. For making you believe I could watch you be destroyed without caring. For his voice cracked slightly. For falling in love with you and being too afraid to tell you until I'd protected you from every threat I could eliminate. The words hung in the air like electricity before a storm. You fell in love with me? The night at the tea house. Maybe before that. Maybe that first night when you helped me through a panic attack without asking for anything in return. He stepped closer. This stopped being a business arrangement weeks ago, Odessa. I just didn't tell you because I didn't want you to think your job security depended on returning my feelings. Odessa's chest felt tight. I'm still angry at you. You should be. You're still a manipulative, controlling, arrogant CEO who makes decisions without consulting the people affected by them. I know. And I should walk away right now and never look back. Probably. Instead, she grabbed his collar and pulled him down to her level. Don't ever make decisions for me again. Don't ever let me think you've abandoned me. Don't ever. He kissed her before she could finish, and it wasn't gentle or careful. It was desperate, like a man who'd been drowning and finally found air. Odessa kissed him back, pouring all her rage and relief and terrifying love into it. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. I have something else to show you, Song said, his voice rough. He led her to the window, where Seoul spread out below them in morning light. Then he pointed to a building in the fashion district. Sleek, modern, perfect. Even from this distance, she could see the sign. Odessa Diallo Designs. What did you do? I bought the building. Equipped 5 floors with everything you need. Fabric library, design studio, production space, showroom, offices for the team I've been hiring for you. He handed her a key. It's yours. Not because of me. Not because of the plan. Because you earned it. Odessa turned the key over in her palm. This is too much. No. Watching you scrub floors when you should have been creating art? That was too much. This is just the beginning of what you deserve. He took a breath. The contracts are already prepared. Your first collection launches next month. I've lined up meetings with every major department store in Seoul. You have investors, buyers, and a waiting list of clients that includes people who've never heard of the scandal. How? Because while Sora was being arrested, I was having my PR team contact every fashion journalist in Asia with your story. Not the fake scandal, the real one. A talented designer whose education was interrupted by family tragedy. A woman who worked 3 jobs to pay her mother's medical bills while teaching herself couture techniques. An artist who was finally given a chance and created something extraordinary. He pulled out his phone, showed her article after article. Korean African fusion. The design revolution you need to know. Odessa Diallo. From night shift to spotlight. The designer framed by a jealous rival. You turned me into a sympathetic figure. I told them the truth. You did the rest by being exactly who you are. Someone with incredible talent who refused to give up even when the world made it almost impossible. His eyes searched hers. I can't give you back the 3 days of pain. I can't undo the fear. But I can give you this. Empire of your own. A future that belongs to you. Odessa's eyes burned with tears. Why? Because you helped a broken man learn to breathe again. Because you saw me at my worst and didn't run. Because you're the first person in my life who wants me, not what I can give them. He took her hands. And because I love you enough to spend the rest of my life proving I'll never put you through that kind of pain again. That's a bold promise from a man who plays chess with people's lives. Then let me prove it. He pulled out a small box. Not a ring box, something else. When he opened it, Odessa's breath stopped. Inside was a thread of gold-woven silk, the same type she'd used in her very first design for him. Wrapped around it was a ring, but the ring was secondary to the thread. This isn't a proposal, Song said quickly. Not yet. You're still angry, and you have every right to be. This is a promise. That I see you, not the designer, not the consultant, not the woman who helped me escape a merger. I see Odessa, the woman who's been fighting her entire life. The woman who taught me that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about letting the right person see you break and choosing to heal together. Subscribe and turn on that notification bell if you believe in love that fights for you. Because we're almost at the ending, and it's going to be worth everything you've watched so far. Odessa took the ring, feeling the weight of it. The gold thread caught the morning light, shimmering like possibility. You're such a dramatic CEO. I learned from the best. He smiled, and it was real this time. Open. Vulnerable. So what do you say? Can you forgive a man who destroyed your enemy but broke your heart in the process? I don't know yet. Ask me again in a week. Fair. He stepped back, giving her space. Your building is ready whenever you want to move in. Your team starts Monday. The first collection preview is scheduled for next month. And your mother? Is she? The treatment worked. She's in remission. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. His smile widened at her expression. I figured you'd want to hear that part. Odessa's knees went weak. Her mother was going to live. Her dreams were real. Her future was possible. Actually possible. She looked at Song. At this complicated, brilliant, broken man who'd turned her life into a battlefield and then given her a kingdom. 1 week. Then ask me properly. With a better ring? This ring is perfect. But maybe ask me somewhere that isn't a gilded cage where you kept me prisoner for 3 days. Technically, it was a safe house. Song. Right? 1 week. Better location. I'll plan something worthy of you. He left her there in the penthouse, but this time she had the key to leave whenever she wanted. Odessa stood at the window, looking out at her building, at her future, at the city that had tried to chew her up and spit her out. And she smiled. 6 months later, Odessa stood in her flagship store, surrounded by racks of clothing that bore her name. The collection had sold out in 3 days. Fashion Week in Paris wanted her for next season. Celebrities were fighting for custom pieces. Her mother was healthy, living in a beautiful apartment Odessa had bought with her first real profits. The girl who'd scrubbed floors was gone. In her place was a woman who'd built an empire with her own hands. Song appeared in the doorway, dressed in one of her designs. A suit that blended Korean tailoring with subtle African influences. He'd been true to his word, giving her space to build her business while supporting from the margins. Are you ready? He asked. For what? For me to ask you properly. Her heart jumped. Now? Here. You said somewhere meaningful. This is where you proved to soul that you belong. This is where you proved to yourself that you could build something lasting. He moved closer. This is where you became the woman who didn't need me but chose me anyway. He knelt right there in her store, between racks of her designs, and pulled out the ring. The same one from 6 months ago, but now it meant something different. Odessa Diallo, you walked into my life through a broken elevator and taught me that the coldest hearts can be melted by the right thread of gold. You showed me that strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about being brave enough to let someone see you break and trust them to help you heal. I'm not offering you my empire or my money or my connections. I'm offering you my heart, which is the only thing I have that's actually mine to give. Will you marry me? Odessa looked down at him. This man who turned her life into chaos and then given her the tools to build something beautiful from the wreckage. Yes, but only if you promise to never fake arrest me again. I promise to only use elaborate schemes for good from now on. That's not really a promise. It's the best you're getting from a man who plots like a chess master. She laughed and pulled him up, kissing him there in her store, surrounded by the evidence of everything they'd built together. The customers browsing her designs applauded. Someone took a photo that would be in every society magazine by tomorrow. But Odessa didn't care about the publicity anymore. She'd learned that real success wasn't about being seen by everyone. It was about being seen by the right person. That evening, they stood on the rooftop of the Han Tower, the same building where she'd been arrested 6 months ago. But now she stood there as Song's fiancée, as a successful designer, as someone who'd earned her place rather than being given it. I entered that suite looking for a way to survive, Odessa said softly, watching Seoul's lights flicker to life. I walked out with a man who taught me that survival isn't enough, that I deserved to thrive. And I found a woman who taught me that love isn't about being perfect for each other. It's about being perfectly broken in compatible ways. Song wrapped his arms around her from behind. We're a disaster, you know? The Ice King and the girl who melted him. It sounds like a fairy tale. It sounds like a story someone would tell on YouTube. Please never say that sentence again. She laughed, and the sound carried across the rooftop, mixing with the city noise below. Somewhere in Seoul, other people were fighting their own battles, building their own dreams, trying to survive in a world that made it almost impossible. Odessa hoped they found their own broken elevators, their own impossible chances, their own reasons to believe that sometimes the wrong door leads to exactly the right place. Because she'd learned that love doesn't always arrive gently. Sometimes it breaks down your door, arrests you at a gala, and forces you to become the person you were always meant to be. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. If this story made you believe in second chances, in fighting for love, in the magic of unexpected beginnings, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs hope today. Comment below what moment hit you hardest. Was it the betrayal? The rooftop proposal? The moment she realized he'd protected her all along? And make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because next week, we're bringing you another story that will remind you that your worth isn't determined by where you start. It's determined by the courage to accept where you could go. Thank you for watching Afro-Korean Lore, where every story proves that sometimes the most beautiful love stories start with the most broken elevators. See you in the next one. Don't forget to believe in your own impossible chances. They might just change your life.